We start with concept. We are in fat state. Suppose I took food, and when we take food, 60-70% of our diet is carbohydrate. Approximately 60-70% of our diet is carbohydrate. When I took food, blood glucose will increase. Carbohydrate prototype is glucose, so glucose will increase. This increased glucose will go to pancreas and will release insulin injection. We remember insulin as insulin injection. A question is asked. Very important factor which release insulin is increased blood glucose. So this insulin is increased now. Now glucose is present in blood. What are the function of this glucose? Glucose is having multiple function. First function is this glucose is stored as glycogen. Glycogen in muscle. In muscle, approximately 2% of muscle weight is glycogen. This glucose, extra glucose, is stored as glycogen in liver. Approximately 10% of liver weight is glycogen. So one function of glucose is it is stored as glycogen in muscle and liver. A question is asked, percentage wise glycogen is more in liver, but total muscle mass is much more than the mass of liver. That's why total glycogen is more in muscle and percentage wise it is more in liver. So one function is stored as glycogen. Another function of this glucose is HMP shunt. HMP shunt. Another name is pentose phosphate pathway. In HMP shunt, we produce NADPH and pentose sugar. Pentose sugar. So glucose, one function is storage. Second function is production of NADPH. NADPH produce no ATP. Yes, NADPH is required for reduction. Wherever you want reduction, NADPH will come and will give hydrogen and will reduce. So NADPH is not concerned with energy production. NADPH is concerned with reduction. And pentose sugar is produced by this HMP pathway. So you can remember very easily that HMP shunt, no ATP produced. Why? Because nature said if you want to produce energy, go to glycolysis. Means one more function of glucose is a production of energy. Production of energy, glucose will enter having 6 carbon. Glucose is having how many carbon? 6 carbon will enter glycolysis. And 2 molecules of pyruvate will be formed. Pyruvate is having 3 carbon. A 6 carbon glucose is converted to 2 molecules of 3 carbon pyruvate, and this reaction is called glycolysis. This pathway is glycolysis, and net gain of aerobic glycolysis. Aerobic glycolysis net gain 7 ATP. So energy production, glycolysis. If you want to produce NADPH, pentose sugar, HMP shunt, and this glucose is also stored as glycogen. So till now I have discussed 3 functions of this glucose. Now this pyruvate formed by glycolysis will enter mitochondria. Now I am going to mitochondria. Now this pyruvate entered the mitochondria. This 3 carbon pyruvate will be converted to acetyl coenzyme. Acetyl coenzyme by enzyme pyruvate dehydrogenase. This acetyl coenzyme enter TCA cycle, Krebs cycle, TCA cycle to produce 10 ATP. T4 TCA, 10 T4 10 ATP. Energy is produced. So you are producing energy from glucose by glycolysis, by pyruvate dehydrogenase, by TCA cycle, and we know that complete oxidation of glucose produce 32 ATP, net gain 32 ATPs by complete oxidation of glucose. When energy requirement of cell is fulfilled, then TCA cycle will stop. Point it out. TCA cycle will stop when energy requirement is fulfilled. Now this extra acetyl coenzyme is thrown out of mitochondria. Now again we came to cytosol. This acetyl coenzyme in cytosol will produce fatty acid. So fatty acid synthesis. Acetyl coenzyme in cytosol will produce cholesterol. Cholesterol synthesis means you can say that function of carbohydrate or glucose. Glucose is stored as glycogen in liver and muscle. Glucose undergo HMP shunt and produce NADPH and pentose sugar. Glucose go glycolysis, then pyruvate dehydrogenase TCA cycle for energy production. Extra acetyl coenzyme in cytosol form fatty acid. Acetyl coenzyme in cytosol form cholesterol. So extra carbohydrate converted to fat. Carbohydrate can be converted to fat, but fat cannot be converted to carbohydrate. Question is asked. So this fatty acid, extra fatty acid, bind with glycerol to produce triacyl glycerol, and it is stored in adipose tissue. माँ का प्यार. Yes. So this is a fate of carbohydrate. All these pathway, whatever I have discussed, all these pathways, all these steps are activated by insulin. This is mnemonic, conceptual mnemonic. Yes, I told you that fed state hormone is insulin. This increased glucose will go to pancreas and will release insulin. What is the function of insulin? Insulin will activate all these pathway mentioned on this page, except TCA cycle. Yes, all pathway on this page are activated by insulin except TCA cycle. TCA cycle has no hormonal control. It is regulated allosterically. Means if cell require energy, TCA will go. And if cell have sufficient energy, then TCA will stop. So this TCA cycle is not regulated by hormone. All other are activated by insulin. Now I summarize. Yes, glycolysis is activated by insulin. So rate limiting enzyme of glycolysis phosphofructokinase is activated by insulin. Link reaction pyruvate dehydrogenase. This link reaction is activated by insulin. Yes, glycogen synthesis. Rate limiting enzyme is glycogen synthase activated by insulin. HMP shunt, rate limiting enzyme glucose 6 phosphate dehydrogenase activated by insulin. Fatty acid synthesis, yes, acetyl coenzyme carboxylase, rate limiting enzyme activated by insulin. Cholesterol synthesis, rate limiting enzyme HMG coenzyme reductase activated by insulin. All these pathway are activated by insulin. Activate all these pathway, all these rate limiting enzyme.